Welcome to Unleashing Potential today. And with me, my guest, someone that is known to you, is the one and only Viking Cobus Visser. Cobus, how are you doing?
Hi, Doc. Yeah, no, I'm doing good. It's nice to be back with you and to share some inspirations, some tools and tips, and just, I think, just starting this 2025 with a bang, and may we just build it step by step, and maybe this be the journey for us to help people.
And the scary part is, Viking, we're already in past the second half of the next month in 2025. I mean, somehow this is just catching me that I'm running more than usual. And yourself?
The same. It's like there's not enough time, and we get ourselves so busy and our calendar so busy. And it's not only us, people that I've been talking to recently is that they're overwhelmed with emails and overwhelmed with social media and everything that's happening around us, and the news is, it has actually an impact on all of us. And how are we going to manage that going forward?
And the focus today is about going forward because the topic today is the word heritage. Now, by virtue of heritage, it sort of has three tenses to it. It has a past, where do you come from?
Yes.
It's got the present, where are we now? And it's got a future in terms of what impact is that going to have in terms of us as part of our heritage. What will people say? You know, that on your tombstone, here lies Cobus Visser, born such and such a date, dash, and then obviously the date that we were called Heavenly Word. But that dash is what it's about. And that is what do we do here that's going to make a lasting impact in the future? That's in other words, what heritage uh, laid our foundations, and what will our heritage be when you and I are not here one day to hear what they say about us? If somebody's got a voice on the mantelpiece speaking to us, hopefully it's good things about us. I
Yeah.
hope that is the case. But let's unpack it. I'm going to take the little acronym today, and I'm just going to start with heritage is understanding and preserving the past. Now, the past means, my surname is Van Tonder. Where I come
Yes.
from is I come from Denmark. Why? The first Van Tonders hailed from Denmark, and obviously we're also part of the Vikings, and that's why you and me are on this call today, because somehow we're interconnected through a European connection. So that's where we come from a little place called Tonderen, and then as you move it comes Van Tonder, which is from Tonderen. And yourself,
Yeah.
where's your heritage from?
I think, and it's good that we talk about heritage. I think it's so much bigger than just the past. This past, it defines us. It is where we come from. It's our roots, basically. And it needs to inspire us to know that, there's people that how many thousands have come before us that have laid out the foundations for us to be able to be here. When I did my DNA analyst, is that, because in our family, is that it's more Northern German and Denmark. So it's that area of the world that it comes from, and percentage of my DNA. Even though my surname is more Netherlands, it's not what my DNA says. I think also having that impact, knowing where we're from, where home would have been, to where we are now today. And I think there's so many lessons for us to learn. Otherwise, we are destined to repeat it. So if we don't look back
Mm.
and learn from our heritage to inspire us, we're just going visionless through life going forward.
Well, with that being said, that little town that I mentioned to you, Tonderen, was on the border of Denmark and Germany. So somehow there's something and interrelated. And then what happened to my guys is that in the 1600s they moved from Denmark to the Netherlands, and from the Netherlands they came to South Africa in 1699. They came with a specific ship, and that's where my people actually arrived here in South Africa in the year
Yes.
1699. Now, you're talking about you from the Netherlands, 10 to 1, also same from Denmark, Germany, kind of into the Netherlands, because it seems there was a migration into Africa in the 1650s, as we know.
Yeah, as we know, and I think a lot of people came this side, but also not only now in the 1600s, how many 100 years before that did people disperse and move into new directions? And I think that's the thing is being a traveler, that's why we are here. And that's probably why I'm connected to travel still in this age. It's probably part of our DNA. When to still travel the world and see the world and constantly go on that quest to discover and not be planted in our roots. So I think, again, I think for people out there is, where are you from? What is your history? One thing that I notice about you that I'm looking at is you've gone to this heritage sites where you've registered your name to map out your whole existence. That's how you got to the information. And while you have the information, that sort of gives you purpose, doesn't it, Doc?
It does. It does. Now, the thing is, you and I have a choice in terms of how we live at that purpose. The first, the H was about the history, but the E is about excellence. And for me, that is striving for the highest standard. And that is when I started going into this tree, it is so easy to say, oh, that looks like it could have been my great grandfather, and you can click on it. Oh my gosh, do you know how I battled to get that off the tree once you've locked in the wrong person because it just runs generations to the top. And if you want to serve in excellence, you can't guess. You have to be sure. You have to look at the
Yeah.
facts. You have to look at what is being presented to you. I mean, because the possibility is that there could be two people named Cobus Visser with exactly the same name, with exactly the same
Yeah.
surname, but it's a different person. That's just how it works. Just think of that
Yeah, I
way.
think also excellence is also knowing about what is the standard we want to live by and what is the standard that has been set. You
Yeah.
know, that excellent standard that to raise the bar. You know, if your previous generations have done it. So give you an example, my great grandfather was the first president of South Africa. And
Okay.
knowing that history, what he did, you know, he not only that he became president, he was 13 when he finished matric, he was 17 when he was a lawyer, he traveled to America, he played in silent movies. You really experienced a lot of things, and he was almost killed during the English Boer War, and yet he became one of the first presidents of South Africa. So he's brought a lot. Now I can't just now suddenly have a mediocre life. You know, that inspires me. If my past can reach that heights, what heights can I reach? And I think that's also what put me on this path. So I agree with you. Excellence is what is your excellence and what is your standard?
Correct. Now, tying that back to that tree, my ancestors were De Wet. General De Wet was in my direct line. Okay. So yours went into the state president, mine was an army general. And obviously, we had to make a stand in terms of who we are and fight for our land. Because obviously,
Yes.
there, as you know, there was a skirmish, but at the end, I think we survived. And if you look at the peoples of the world today, if there's a people group that is very revered, it happens to be the Afrikaner in terms of their tenacity and the way that they actually do strive for excellence. And I think that just shows that when we talk about our heritage, it's a sense of pride, a sense of decorum of not pride in the wrong way, but proudly for the right reason. Would you agree with me?
Yes. And I think, yeah, and I think just let that inspire us. And, you know, some people, I've written my book and I've put a lot about my history and I understand South Africa history, but I think we have to be proud, no matter where we're from. And
Correct.
because we can't judge the people in the past for the decisions they made because we don't have all of the context. There were certain decisions that were made, but can we be proud of at least of some of the things they have achieved? Because that's, if it was not for him, I wouldn't be here today and I wouldn't have the aspirations that I have today. And I think, again, agree with you, pride is very important.
Okay, so now if we look at that acronym, we've had H for history, we have had E for excellence. Now we talk R for respect. What about
Yes.
honoring traditions and people? Now, do you guys have family traditions that you know that comes only in your family and that's the way you used to do it and everybody does it the same way? I'm sure there's stories we can tell around the campfire.
Definitely. So, Doc, you know, think about your family. You know, what is something that has been passed down from your generation that you're actually still doing and you passing it on to your next generation?
I can tell you one thing, and that is to serve your wife like a queen. I got that from my father. He got it from his father. And the men in our homes, we serve the women that we love like that's the queen of your life. And that is a generational thing that's been passed down, that you respect the woman that's in the home, knowing that they bring their own value, their own character, their own uh, who they are. But you need to have your position right. And that's that respect of honoring them for who they are. And that's what we did. And from
Yes.
your side, what jumps out at your mind?
Yeah, you know, just talking about it and looking at our whole family history is learning about history, knowing our history. That's been big. You know, growing up, we would stop at every museum, every monument, and talking about history. My dad said his dad used to do that to him, and that used to happen to his mom and dad. And if I think about my grandfather, he wrote stories about history. He did the stuff in history, and just knowing our history from a young age guess what am I doing with my children? I take them to museums, I take them to monuments
True.
to teach them about the history and understanding that we have to learn from our history. So that's definitely one that has been passed down. And I probably guarantee you they're going to one day do it with their kids as well.
So when we look at the word heritage, what you're saying is undeniably the looking at the past actually sets up a foundation for our future. That's really what it is. We are who we are
Yes.
based on who we were and who we've become and who we are becoming. Isn't that true?
Not only who we were, but who the previous generations was before us. What have they gone through? It's about learning from them so that we don't repeat the same mistakes, right? How can we take it from there? And I think that's why it's so important to keep transferring stories from generation to generation so that we can grow and keep moving forward. If I think just about the royalty in the UK, how many of the properties and history gets transferred from generation to generation that has an impact going more generations. I mean, how can we create a culture of where we build something that lasts for ages?
And the thing is, we need to find a system that will facilitate that. Now, I know in South Africa that if you have a trust is a living entity, but it doesn't belong to a person. It doesn't belong to you, it doesn't belong to me, but it belongs to the family. So if you have a
Yeah.
trust, whatever goes into that will basically survive from generation to generation. That's leaving a heritage.
Definitely. And I've met a family business. I think the fifth generation is how they get the business, the trust to keep growing is that they take out the life policy on every member of the family, even if you are far extended. So that when they pass away, that money goes into the family trust that allows the family trust to have a cash flow to even expand even more, to generate more health for the rest of the family. So they just as they die, they just get richer. Can you believe that?
Wow, Cobus, but that makes my brain explode because that respect of your name and your place in terms of taking it forward. Because think of the respect and the honor in that. It's to say we take out a life policy so that it can go for the next generation. Now, wow, that is mind blowing. In fact, I think if anybody's listening to this today to say, take this one nugget that you heard from Cobus Viking and say, if I do that with my family, I'm already going to be better off than where I am right now. So that is my challenge
Yes.
to you listening in here today. Cobus, that's a brilliant one. What a nugget. Okay, we've had
Yes.
history, we've had excellence, we've had respect. The next one's a big one for me, integrity. Integrity is staying true to values and principles. Now, there's always been a bit of a mix up in my own home because, as you know, my surname is Van Tonder, but my father was English. My mother's surname was McLaren, but she was Afrikaans. So, integrity wise, people always challenge me, say to me, make up your mind. Are you English or are you Afrikaans? And I said, well, here's the truth. My dad, my sister, myself spoke English to each other. My mother and my two brothers spoke Afrikaans to each other. So I don't know. So when it comes to integrity, I think the call is to be who you are and be true to yourself. Don't try and live out and be who you're not. I mean, so many people, if you ask them, are they English or Afrikaans, will actually sort of step away, scared that they might say the wrong thing. There's nothing to be ashamed of. Integrity says, stand for your values, stand for your principles. How do you interpret that one?
I think the question should be, what is your values? I think
Ah,
most people don't even know the values that they should stand for. And having it's nice to have a word and say, this is my value, but what does that value define that value? How
correct.
do you need to see? Because a value in your family means differently if that same value was for a different family.
True.
So, and how are you, the family, going to live it out? How's that standard going to be living out that value? So, I think most people fall, and that's why integrity has challenges because they haven't defined their values or what they stood by. For example, family wasn't my main value in my family, and work and career was. And the reason for that is I needed the finances, income to be able to support the family lifestyle. And so every decision I made, and yes, it had an impact on my family, but was towards providing for the family, where my family wanted me to have family first. And that meant that I had to sacrifice certain things to be able to be a family. And because we don't have the same values, how can we live in that integrity? Because we think we're living in integrity, but the thing is, we're not communicating our values to people around us. And the thing is, then we start attracting similar people and those values, or we attract people that's going to test our values.
True.
Are living towards that values. You've been also tested in the past few years on your values, and it make you realize is that, wow, if this is my value, is how do I live by that?
You cannot say it better. I mean, I just think to myself, for the people who do not want to stand by the value that describes them, I mean, if only people know that when we have disagreements, a lot of that is because of the value that we carry. Now, for instance, I'll give you
Yes.
one example. My one value is integrity, and my wife's one value is loyalty. I thought loyalty and integrity is sort of the same thing. Oh boy, was I wrong. Because loyalty to her is if you basically have put a dagger in her heart and you turn it sideways, you're dead. You are not
Yeah.
part of her life. And it doesn't matter how many times you say, forgive me and forgiveness. She says, listen, I've forgiven them, but I haven't forgotten. If you've been
Yes.
disloyal to me, you're not part of my tribe. And you know what? I've had to make peace with that the way people embed their values, it's their right to do so. And I've had to say,
Yes.
although I'm the kind of person that we want to go and say, well, let's forgive them, let's find a way forward. And she says, no, nowhere does the good word teach me I have to go and have tea with them. I can forgive them,
Yeah.
but I don't have to tell them that they were right. I mean, so values play a vital role in terms of how we disperse of how we manage people and manage our situations. That drives, in fact, the question we can ask ourselves is, what are the top 5 values that drive our behavior? I can tell you now, my number one is justice. And whenever I see
Mm.
an injustice, oh boy. Like, for instance, we were standing, I'll never forget, uh, at a street corner, and there was a guy and his wife standing. She was in an evening dress. And this guy gave her a clip and he hit her right off her feet. Now, my value of injustice just kicked in. And boy, I was out of my car and obviously I decked this guy. Until the next moment, this woman rips me by my shirt and says, how dare you lay hands on my husband? I went, what? Because for me, it was an injustice to see a male laying a hand on a female. But yet,
Yes.
it was a different positioning for her. So if my value made me react, not even respond, I was reacting. So I think we also need to bear in mind that the personal touch of how we interpret our values and live them is not necessarily how other people will receive that.
Yeah. And the moment we start embedding this in our families, and then I think it leads us to the next one, it creates the tradition.
Yeah,
What is the tradition in our family?
yeah,
It becomes part of our family heritage. You will notice if you call, if you think about your history, certain surnames and certain families, they lived by a certain value system and who they were. They're always honest, or this, or they're always hardworking. You could actually define people because of that tradition of the values that they live.
that is true. Man, there's one tradition in our household: Sunday afternoon rest time. Now, you're a
Yes.
youngster, man. You want to go and play outside. You want to get up to mischief. But your dad's value and of tradition was Sunday afternoon, we sleep because that is
Yes.
basically our resting time. Oh boy, I will never forget my old man coming down those stairs and ruffling my hair because I was not quiet. I wasn't honoring that tradition of the family. And I found that,
Mm.
and especially in our nation, that Sundays are respected as a day of rest. And if
Mm.
that's a tradition, don't mess with the tradition, make it work. And if you're somehow forced every now and then, like we said, if there really is an endangered time, as the kalf in the pit, like the Afrikaner people say, like there's a real problem and you have to go and work and do something, then fine. But, if you are from the point of departure, it's your day of rest because Earth was created in 6 days, and the seventh day, God rested. And I think it's just such a beautiful example of all work and no play makes us a dull boy. Do you also believe in that, like I do?
Definitely, I do believe, and I think that's just family. But think about finances, think about business. That also becomes a tradition. There's certain cultures that, if you think about business growing up, the
Yeah.
Greeks on the corner, the Portuguese, they were always known for people running business and negotiate with the Indians. Don't take the price that they say. But that's traditions that have been brought down for them. That's normal for them. And I think is to understand is that if you think about your family, is what is a tradition you're starting to create in your family that's setting them up for abundance, setting them up for a different mindset where they are succeeding instead of always living in lack. I think talking about the subjects is allowing us to realize is we have the power to change it and create the new if we are not happy with our situations in our life.
You're absolutely right. I mean, we know it says that the tongue has got the power of life or death. Speak life and therefore eat its fruit. Because we can take any
Yes.
situation and speak differently into it. Okay, that
Yeah.
is it. And then if we take it to the next one, authenticity. Oh man, I
Yes.
want to tell you that's one of the areas where I need to get my life in order. Yes, real. Network marketing. If I can be real with you and be authentic, I've messed up so many relationships. Why? Because I forced people to join me because I was charismatic and had the influence. But I've lost so many relationships. If I can be authentic to you today, that part of heritage, I do not want to relive in my life. I hope that other people don't make the mistake and hear my hidden caution. Don't lose your relationships at the cost of possibly advancing yourself financially.
Yeah, I think also, Doc, if you think about it, is remember at that time, if one takes it in context, you did the best that you could with the resources to your availability. You
Yeah,
know, you wanted to share potential of wealth, and you trusted certain people in your life. And I think it's coming to that point is how do you live authentically,
yeah.
yet also not how do you impact people and who do you trust? And I think it comes back to again, I'm going back to now I know values, but to be authentically is what is your values again, as because the values attract the people, what is it, what is important for you, what is that how are you going to define that? Because we know the similar people is that we attract those people in our life
Yeah.
that showed us something and that tested our values that we said we are willing to let go because we put our trust in them and that they have the same. So let's ask you the question, those people,
Mhm.
did they have the same values as you?
Some did, some did not.
And how many of them said always, I'm authentically, I'm authentic me and stuff.
They
So
say
why
it,
do you
but you know
tell
what?
people, don't say it.
Proof is in the pudding. Don't say it,
Yes,
show it. That's the
show
difference.
it.
And the people that came forward and showed that they're there. In fact, I went through a company where there was bad news and a lot of people fell out. But the people who were real are the people who remained there to say, we support you no matter what. Because we know that
Yes,
you were genuine, you were authentic. But a lot of
definitely.
other
If
people,
that didn't happen, yeah, and if that didn't happen, you wouldn't have grown to the person that you are now and to
absolutely.
teach. And it's, I know I'm jumping it, but
No,
if you didn't grow, you wouldn't have been able to inspire other people now to learn from that mistake so that they don't destined to repeat it.
but that's why the next one is growth, evolving while staying rooted. Let me tell you now that
Yes,
adversity is one of the best ways to usher us into greatness because it's the
yes,
adversity that pushes us to levels that we didn't even know we possessed. I mean, you yourself, I mean, if you look at your physical impairment, how you've had to push through and become the best version of yourself. Look what that's done for you today. I mean, people look at you and it's like, oh my gosh, Cobus, but you still do things like firewalk. You still do the cold water thing. But if I look at you physically, we can see that you have not had it as well as other people who can run onto a rugby field and tackle the guy because he's just got the physical structure. But you have grown into embracing that and setting an example for others and become literally a hero of South Africa for doing that for so many people. So don't be shy now. Talk about that.
I think as sometimes we don't have a choice and we have to grow through our circumstances and situation. As either we can fight it or we can say, okay, what can I learn from it and grow through it? It's because people don't always understand what I've been through. And I think as it's to share, it's not what I've been through, is how do we overcome these circumstances, because everyone's circumstances and situation is totally different.
Yeah.
It hasn't been easy, but it's that constant day of standing up, because it wasn't about growing through the pain. It was about conquering depression and anxiety and
Mm.
stress that lives and with me every day. The pain I can handle, but it's that little voice that I have to conquer, of depression and suicidal thoughts when the pain gets too much.
You see, the thing is, what do we see that we don't see? Now, I can look at your eyes and I can see pain, but I don't know what is supporting that, whether it's depression, whether it's anxiety, whatever it is. And I think that is
Yes.
where we fall short of realizing that we need to come to terms with ourselves. Well, that comes to the last
Yeah.
one, the E, the empowerment, to inspire future generations. We are here today talking and sharing our life story. You're sharing mine, I'm sharing mine. And it's about empowering. So if we want to actually have a heritage that means something, it is to empower the future generation. Talk to me about what do you think is the most important keystones or stepping stones to actually get us there?
Oh, I think it starts with me. Me stands for manifesting excellence. I think it's also about the story about, there's a story about this little boy that is bored, and he gets this. He goes to his mom, and his mom says, "Okay, I'm going to get you a puzzle." He sees the map of the world. She tears it into little pieces, and she gives it to him and says, "Here's a puzzle. Go put it together." A few moments later, he comes back and he fixed the map of the world. And she asks him, "How did you do that?" And he says, "It was the easiest thing, Mom. You see, when I turned the pieces around, I saw the face of a person. And the moment I fixed the person, the world was fixed." And that hit me so home. And then a day is we can't change the world, but we can change the world inside of us. And that's how we inspire is can we invest in ourselves to become that excellent person that can then inspire others in the end of the day?
Correct. Well, empowerment is so important, but I think it starts with self. The third is, what will
Yes.
you do to empower yourself in an area where you know you need to be sharpened? You know, there's a
Yes.
good word that says iron sharpens iron. And that is why mentors like you and I speaking to the lives of other people. But I want people to whom I've made myself accountable to have the liberty to say to me, Doc, stop, you're out of line. I
Yes.
welcome that because that is embracing the truth, because that will empower me, number one, to become more humble in terms of accepting it, and number two, to fix it. Now, for yourself, empowerment is key for you, empowering people to the next level. What is the most important part of empowering people for you?
I think it's the transformation in what people go through and the impact that they will have on other people. It's almost that pay it forward system is you impacting someone and then it has that ripple effect of impacting other people that we don't always see. And I think that's what it's about for me is sometimes I hear about it years later about impact that I've had on someone's life or someone that knew someone that I impacted. And I think that's what it's about. It is so much bigger. I think we can't put it all together in a sentence and say, this is what it's going to do. It's much bigger than what we think. But I think that's just where faith comes in is can we live by that faith that when we do something that it will have that lasting impact on others?
Absolutely. Well, with that being said, that sort of brings us to the end of our talk today. I mean, now other people saying, no, don't stop it. You know what? That's the way it is because you have to log into the next time we speak to Cobus. Cobus, thank you for being on this talk today. We are here to unleash people's potential. We're here saying that we'd like to leave a heritage coming from our past into our present, but there has to be a future. And your last takeaway for the people out there.
Yeah, I think it's to combine it by a quote from Ochmandina says that I'm here for a purpose, and that the purpose is to grow into a mountain and not to shrink into a grain of sand. Henceforth, I will apply all my efforts to grow into the highest mountain of all, and I will strain my potential until it cries for mercy.
Whoa, those are the wise words from Cobus Viking Visser, and that just hit my soul right here. Hope it did the same for you. And remember, application is key. Listen, absorb, and become part of the solution. And you need to unleash your full potential. Take care.